Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the sports betting podcast, Bookends, powered by STN Sports. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. It's week one of the pros. Excitement is in the air. You can just kind of feel it. You're starting to see more caps and jerseys and people kind of walking around and all that buzz about pro football, the young quarterbacks, and if it's Bo Nix in Denver or Jaden Daniels with the Commanders or Caleb Williams with the Bears, just a lot of hype right now. But before we dive into that, Jay, let's talk a little bit about college football. Holiday weekend, first full schedule of college football. Kind of an interesting week. I mean, you look at the new Big Ten favorites went 17-1 in those games straight up, but really highlighted by a couple of big-time games.
Yeah, and I when I look at it, first of all, last week, kind of the big thing on the schedule was there was a lot of blowouts. A lot of the teams we talked about that were big, huge favorites were able to put up those points and have big covers. We still did.
Made us rethink the Heisman a little bit, right?
We did talk about that there are the dogs to look for and the big underpoint dogs, 7-point dogs or more. We still saw 4 7-point touchdown dogs or more win outright. So those money line cashes on the dogs are out there, including for the second week of the row, week 3 and week 0, where the Florida State Seminoles got knocked off as 14-point favorites, a 16-point favorite against Boston College, and obviously a 14 to 17-point favorite against Georgia Tech. So Florida State.
I'm not going to ask you to say their quarterback's name, but
Florida
off to a rough start.
Has made a lot of money for their opposing players. But as we I can't go without mentioning week 1, the USC Trojans. Monday here at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas against the LSU Tigers. Absolutely fantastic game, fantastic college football game. But a lot of respect earned for the USC Trojans in the fact that they go and they beat an LSU team, which was heavily bet LSU team. It was a big need for the books on USC. But USC didn't look like a Pac-12 team anymore. Right. This was not a firepower offense with a leaky defense. This was what looked like to me a team that was preparing to go play a Big Ten schedule.
You have to be, though. You have to make
physical,
that adjustment. Right.
Big Ten defense, and Mason Miller, what a ball game for him, and showed his toughness. Something to be excited about there for USC Trojan fans.
Yeah, I think if you're LSU and Brian Kelly now, that's 3 straight years you lose the opener. So really it puts them behind the 8 ball. I mean, they want to be a playoff team this year, but that's a game that I think everybody thought they would win with what USC had coming back, the change at quarterback, and just so many changes on the defensive side of the ball. Really kind of a rough loss, I think, for LSU to start the season.
One loss isn't going to take you out of a 12-team college football playoff. So all these teams that had maybe a shocker.
But it hurts early in the season.
Sure. Sense of urgency, got to go win games, so something to look for there. 2 teams that did both pick up wins. Texas, a huge, impressive win over Colorado State. Michigan kind of played a low, ugly scoring game against Fresno State, and then were able to win 30-10, kind of pulling away in the fourth quarter. But we see Texas going to the Big House early morning on Saturday. They opened up a 5.5-point game favorite. The game has leaked up to 7. Even Texas has a 7.5-point favorite some places. And early looks at this, we kind of said to ourselves, man, you really just don't walk into the Big House as a 7-point favorite and knock off Michigan. But this is, to me, this is still, do we know who Michigan is? They're still the 10th ranked team in the country. Texas is the 3rd ranked team in the country. Michigan has the kind of double 2 guys playing quarterback. We had a complete replacement of the offensive line. But a good win over a good Fresno State team, which they held to 9 yards rushing. So from a defensive standpoint, they did their job there. And on the flip side for me, for Texas, beat a middle-of-the-road Colorado State football team. However, Colorado State, Fowler Nicoletti, their quarterback, he threw for like close to 3,500 yards last year, and Texas was able to hold Colorado State to 71 yards passing. This Texas team is a national championship quality team. Yes, there's this Texas to me is one of the more intriguing teams in all of college football this year. They lose last year in the Red River rivalry to Oklahoma, and then their only other loss is in the college football semifinal to Washington. This is a team that beat Alabama in week 2 last year. When you get to that type of win-loss record and you lose in the college national semifinal, that leaves a really nasty taste in your mouth from a competitive standpoint. With Ewers back, with that team back, with Sarkisian back, this feels like a national championship ball club. The one interesting thing for me on this game, again, seeing Texas as a 7 to 7.5 point favorite, is the total is only kind of in that 42 to 42.5 range. So we're predicting kind of a 24, 25 to 17 type game, which with the way Texas is scoring, for me, if Michigan's able to stand up and play defense and be able to run the football, that should be around the max that they're going to score is that 17 to 24 to kind of stay in this game. If they are forced to throw the football, which they don't really want to do at this point in time, and obviously we saw Texas was able to really control Colorado State, this could be one of those games that we see Texas, again, run it up if Michigan can't run the football.
Again, this is the marquee game of the week, guys, and don't forget, too, I mean, this is the week that counts for last man standing, so you still have time to get signed up. Saturday's the deadline. There's a lot of good games this weekend, 100,000 guaranteed in the college last man standing contest. Really unique because there's not a lot of college offerings out there, so you still have time to get signed up by Saturday for the college football last man standing. $25 entry fee gets you one entry, $100 gets you four, and a bonus fifth entry. Really fun contest.
And if you're sitting at home right now and you're not getting ESPN on DirecTV, we will have ESPN on Saturday. Come into our books and watch those ESPN televised games here at Station Casinos.
You heard it here, guys. So, interesting college slate this week again. We talked about how successful the Big Ten was. Marquee game is Texas on the road at the Big House. Come in and check out all the action. We'll be back with our next segment to dive into pro football week 1 here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook.
Do you want it all? Easy-to-use app with great odds? Check. Seats that make you feel like you're at the game? The friendliest, most helpful team members this side of Lake Mead? Sure, some places have this and that, but if you want it all, it's at STN Sports. Download the STN Sports app now.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the sports betting podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports, and I just can't wipe the smile off my face, and I know he's smiling too. Pro football week 1. We know the crowd, the atmosphere, the hype in the book is going to be crazy on Sunday. Not only on Sunday, but Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday. It's going to be fun. We know it's kind of contagious throughout the casino. The sounds that kind of echo from the Racing Sportsbook at all of our properties just are magnetic. I mean, they draw people to the book. People want to see the action going on, and we're fired up. I think it's a interesting football season, and you think about the Thursday night game again, the Kansas City Chiefs, 2-time Super Bowl champions, looking to make it a three-peat, try to defend their title. Last year they opened up against the surprising Detroit Lions, and it was, the Lions were singing tonight because the Lions went in there, Kansas City, and upset them and won outright. Here they play the Ravens. They're a small favorite against the Ravens on Thursday night. And you look at Lamar Jackson, he hasn't had a lot of success against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. He's just 1-4. They're a small underdog. These are the two teams, I think, at the top of the AFC board, very competitive AFC, but these are the teams, and I know a lot of people, including Jay, likes the Ravens to maybe dethrone the Chiefs this year, but a great way to kick off the season.
Yeah, I'll start off right from there. I have Ravens and Eagles as my Super Bowl matchup as we sit here prior to week 1, so we can rewind 22 weeks from now and we'll see that Ravens-Eagles matchups and I can say I told you so. The big difference here for me with the Ravens, again, is a sense of urgency. I think that I've made it kind of known that the Chiefs, with the consistent getting to the Super Bowls, getting to the championships, I think that the playoffs become that much more important to them. And the regular season, they know that they just need to get to the playoffs. Obviously, coming through as an underdog and playing on a bunch of the road last year. I think the Ravens it's a different scenario. And the Ravens, they go sign Derrick Henry for that reason, is they have that sense of urgency. They know they have a championship team. They know they have a championship defense.
They had over 20 rushing touchdowns last year with Dobbins a little bit, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. I mean, a lot of guys that aren't in that Hall of Fame category like Derrick Henry is.
Yeah, and who knows how long his legs are going to stay underneath him and who knows how long of a season he has. But right now, Derrick Henry's healthy. Derrick Henry's going to be a big difference maker to this Baltimore Ravens team. And again, if they can run the ball, they've got the perfect weapon between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field, which is the scariest part of the Kansas City Chiefs team, as well as that defense that continued to improve last year. But I think, again, for me, both the Niners and Chiefs, I think that there's a little bit of a lack of sense of urgency, and I look for them to have maybe a little bit slower start to this regular season than maybe some other people. So I do think that the Ravens can steal this game, and if they don't, it's okay. I still think the Ravens are in great shape from an AFC standpoint. You keep going into Kansas City and winning a football game, whether you win or lose, you just want to play well, and hopefully you can steal a game in Kansas City. And we know what Patrick Mahomes can do. The Taylor Swift train stays on. We'll see how many times she's there opening night, and we'll see if But again, Kelsey's getting older. They've got a bunch of mix of young
So you have
wide
some
receivers.
doubts that the Chiefs can swiftly move up and down the field against the Ravens D?
They've got a ton of young wide receivers that we are going to continue to see develop. We know what Travis Kelce is. We saw the way they used Isaiah Pacheco last year in the playoffs. So I think
Rice
they run
not
the football
suspended. You've got Rice and Worthy. I think more importantly to me is the Chiefs' defense. They were so dominant last year. It really wasn't about their offense. It's that Chief defense, and they lost last year on opening night, and it's Andy Reid again. We talk about how good Andy Reid is off a bye. Now he's had the entire preseason to kind of prepare for this Ravens team. He's seen Derrick Henry. They've been in the AFC now for a number of years. He's seen him. He knows what he's getting there. He's had success against the Ravens. They're 4-1 against the Ravens. I think it's that Kansas City defense now that's going to be interesting to see how they adapt now against this Ravens offense with Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and remember, missing last year for the Ravens was Mark Andrews, who was hurt along a large part of the year. Isaiah Likely, the tight end, his backup, became
You
kind
look
of a
for Zay
budding
Flowers to take that
superstar.
next step.
So we're talking about all these names and throwing all these names out for both teams. Get on the app and check out all the props. There is literally right
Like
now, as
80
we
props.
sit, there's like 78 different ways, different props that you can bet on the game. And you're going to see that menu expand for all the games. So right now, the Thursday matchup with the props getting expanded, the Friday matchup with the Packers and Eagles, those props are starting to get put in there. And you're going to see it all the way through the Sunday and Monday matchups with probably 100 to 150 different props on all these games. So again, get on that STN Sports app and check it out.
So now we've touched on the Thursday game, but we're really, Friday game too. These isolated primetime games that sit by themselves, they generate a lot of handle. There's a lot of props on these games. There's a lot of action and fun. And these two teams, having Green Bay and Philadelphia, travel to Brazil to play. Philadelphia is a very small road favorite here at 2.5 points. It would be a home game for them. And Philly is getting a lot of love this year from the future book perspective, the win total to win the NFC. It's you go out and you get Saquon Barkley. You pick up Dotson. So you look at the weapons they have in addition to Brown and Smith and Goddard and Hurts. Now you add Barkley and Dotson to that team. And Green Bay, too, one of the fastest movers on our future book. Jordan Love's got 4 really talented wide receivers, a nice young tight end in Musgrave. And then they add Josh Jacobs, who's just a 2 years removed from leading the league in rushing. So a lot of dynamic offensive playmaking there. Totals 49. Not sure how it'll play out in Brazil on the field and how they'll look there, but these are two offensive teams that can score a lot of points, and both may have a chance to play in February.
Yeah, and what great games the NFL gives us
right.
to kick things off here. Obviously, the Packers in the NFC Championship last year had the lead, lose to the Niners. Jordan Love, essentially from Week 11 on, was the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. He's got a superstar set of wide receivers that he can go to. You make mention of adding Josh Jacobs to the backfield, replacing Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who's
hurt,
injured for
yeah.
them. So Josh Jacobs can have a big part. But again, great coaching, great offense and ability there. Jordan Love signs the big deal. You talk about the Eagles, and another reason why Ravens-Eagles is my matchup. I talk about the Eagles, and I talk about the Eagles from a sense of urgency. We saw this Eagle team absolutely collapse the back end of the season last year. They looked like they were headed to the Super Bowl, no doubt. All these weapons that they had, the way they were playing, the unstoppable push-tush, and then they just absolutely collapsed, both on the offensive side of things and the defensive side of things, where they couldn't stop anyone.
I want to ask you one question. They add Barkley, they add Dotson. We know how
They had Kellen Moore.
We
They
know,
had a bunch of pieces on defense.
But there's one big subtraction there too, and that's Kelce at center. And you really wonder how that will affect kind of the tush-push and kind of anchoring that offensive line and being the guy. I'm really curious to see how that loss hurts that offense.
Yes, you're showing some love, and you got Hurts. You're throwing both the quarterbacks out. But I think that's why we see what kind of significance Saquon Barkley adds to this offense. You remember last year, or going back to several years, DeAndre Swift was the lead back last year. So it became important for Jordan Love or Jalen Hurts to be able to run those short yardage, because Swift is not a big running through the tackles type back. He's an outside running
Barkley,
back.
right.
Well, Barkley still has that power in his legs and can be a short yardage runner. And I think we'll see the offensive change, and then we'll see what Kellen Moore institutes. Kellen Moore, just 2 years removed from seeing Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard have one of the greatest combined rushing seasons that there is. So we'll see what he can add to this offense. You talked about them adding dots into the offense from the Commanders and a healthy Goddard, Jalen Hurts has got a lot of weapons
sure
to go
does.
to.
Yep.
And I do believe that we're going to see a different level of energy from this defense this year. A lot of young superstars. Remember, we were talking about Philadelphia being a mini Georgia with the number of Georgia superstars they have there. Those guys are back. They just need to figure out how to play together and have a better defensive scheme. So looking for something better from this Eagles defense.
You're right, though. The NFL did a great job of these two isolated games. These are all 4 teams that definitely could be in the mix come January and February next year. So it's going to be fun for these two.
Subtle reminder here as well. This is the Peacock game on Friday. So if you don't have Peacock, come to the Station Casino Sportsbooks. We will have the Peacock game for you on the big giant screens at all of our big sportsbooks.
All right, let's look at Sunday now. Texans-Colts. No team seems to be getting more love than the Texans right now. That offense, they added Stephon Diggs. You have a healthy Tank Dell, a healthy Nico Collins. You add Joe Mixon to the mix. They're really expecting C.J. Stroud to take that next step. But you look at the Colts now. Richardson is a year removed from that injury. They draft Mitchell. You've got Pittman, a healthy Taylor. You've got Downs, Pierce. They've got a lot of weapons offensively, too. And there's such a huge gap. You look at the Texans on most future book odds, they're kind of in that 10 to 12 range. And you look at the Colts, who are more in that 60 to 70 range. It just seems like that gap is much closer. I think it is, at least, with Jacksonville and Indianapolis compared to Texans. But Texans are getting all that love. They're a small road favorite. We'll see if it gets pushed up to 3 or not. But really an interesting matchup for both teams to kind of kick off the season. And don't forget, the Texans will host the Bears week 2 on Sunday Night Football. See if they're looking past a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a lot of excitement for both of these teams, obviously, with the quarterbacks and the young quarterbacks in Stroud and Richardson. And we saw Richardson have kind of 2 good games for the Colts and then his season-ending injury. And they didn't have Jonathan Taylor early in the year as he was coming off his kind of injuries and then a contract dispute. So Indianapolis gets 2 really big pieces of the puzzle, healthy coming into this season, and Taylor and Richardson, it can be a dynamic duo from that run standpoint. And it's mentioned all the weapons for the Texans, and they've got a crazy amount of offensive guys that can go get things, but also the improved defense on the Texans side. Right. Really done a great job of again, drafting the defensive linemen, drafting the linebackers. Now this year they go and draft the secondary. So they've really spent some time going and picking up those pieces on the defense. And I think this is going to be a battle. This is going to be not only this week, and the next time they play, but I think these 2 teams, it's going to be back and forth for who can play in the AFC South. I do think Jacksonville is just a tier below both of these 2 teams.
Well, what stands out for me is that Shane Steichen, who's the head coach of the Colts right now, he was the offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts. So as Hurts' development over the first couple of years, it was all Shane Steichen. You have a quarterback in Anthony Richardson, very kind of similar game set, really good at running the ball, scrambling out of the pocket, improvising. I want to see how he uses Richardson. Even though he got hurt last year, they've clearly said, we're not stopping this guy from running. So it's that added dimension you get at quarterback now in Anthony Richardson. See around the goal line if they use him at all, similarly how the Eagles used Jalen Hurts, or is it all Jonathan Taylor? So for you fantasy guys who maybe have a draft still coming up today, early tomorrow, before the season kicks off, look at that with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and my only thing with Richardson is, again, he's expected to be a budding star. If you look at fantasy drafts, he's kind of going off as that 5th, 6th quarterback. He still only has 2 NFL football games under his belt. So I curb your early season expectations and maybe watch him get better and better as the season goes on. And I think that's why we see Houston favored here early on the road at Indianapolis, is just that I think this Indianapolis Colts teams still needs to get a little bit of time under their belt, in particular Anthony Richardson.
Yep. So another game we're going to look at now is an NFC team that has a lot of kind of maybe optimism and gaining some hype against an AFC team that there's some doubt in right now. And that's the Arizona Cardinals traveling to play the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. This game isn't in November and December. We have to worry about that Arizona team traveling to play in really bad weather. So they get them at a good time. Arizona, you've got Kyler Murray now, a year removed from that injury. He still was a top 8 quarterback in the league last year when he came back. You've got Connor at running back. You've got Michael Wilson at wideout. You've got Trey McBride, one of the superstar young tight ends in the league. But who do they go out and draft? Marvin Harrison Jr. to give Kyler Murray that weapon. So I'm anxious to see how that offense kind of meshes. And you look at Buffalo, no Stephon Diggs, no Gabe Davis. A lot of changes with that Buffalo team. No Singletary. So there's a lot of changes that have gone on there. And now you look at a Josh Allen who's going to be forced to throw to Shakir and Keenan Coleman. I think Dalton Kincaid has a huge year and really becomes one of the top tight ends in the league. But this game's inching up closer and closer to 7. Curious to see if it gets to that point or not, Jay. But kind of an interesting matchup for both these two teams. One team seems to be on the rise, and that Buffalo team, a lot of question marks right now, is if they can kind of withhold or withstand what they did the last couple of years.
Yeah, and the one thing for Buffalo that's been a constant is their defense. They've still always going to bring that.
They lose
solid,
Milano, though. That really hurts.
What should be a solid defense going in, and Josh Allen, his ability to both run the football and throw the football, he brings that dynamic. So we don't know what the receiver set's going to be. I don't know that we can say who's going to be wide receiver 1 or if that wide receiver 1 is actually tight end 1
right.
That leads them in receiving. But James Cook's going to be a solid option out of the backfield.
Don't forget they added Curtis Samuel as well.
On Arizona, you mentioned obviously Kyler Murray, who we saw at the back end of last year, coming back from his injury, fully healthy this year, should be that dynamic quarterback we saw kind of 3 years ago. You talked about the development of McBride. We know, again, Marvin Harrison Jr. But again, to me, the biggest guy that's the difference maker in Arizona is James Conner. He's their bell cow running back, and if they're able to run the football, and then put Kyler Murray and these receivers in short yardage situations where Kyler Murray can make that throw of 5 to 6 yards or decide to scramble for 5 or 6 yards, that's what makes the Cardinals very dangerous. So James Conner on first and second down, if he's healthy and able to get those yardage, and he is I love the way he runs. I love the way he runs around the goal line. He's the key for me with this Arizona Cardinals team, is if they're going to go as far as James Conner's legs can take them.
I think most people couldn't even name the starting wide receivers for the Cardinals last year. So you add Marvin Harrison to the mix. If he becomes that guy that is drawing the double team, can stretch the field, a lot more is underneath for a Michael Wilson, for a Greg Deutsch. And then you add, of course, McBride in the mix. There might be a lot of stuff underneath open now. And, of course, for Kyler Murray to run the ball. So kind of a interesting matchup here. Again, we're looking at an AFC versus NFC team. This time, the AFC traveling to the NFC. And that's the Tennessee Titans against the Chicago Bears. This is a really interesting matchup for me because there's so much hype around the Bears. But you look at the Titans, and if I had to pick one team that I think makes a massive jump this year in the AFC, who kind of under the radar, I think it would be the Titans. You look at Will Levis, who had some success last year, did get some starts under his belt. But for a young quarterback, you look at the weapons he has now, Jay. They went out and picked up Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. You still have Treylon Burks. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, who looks like he might play. At running back, you've got a young Tajay Spears. You've got Tony Pollard, so a two-headed monster there. So a lot of weapons for Will Levis. The Bears, of course, Roma Dunze, they draft to go with Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Kmet, Swift. So both these teams have a lot of young offensive pieces. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch to see how these two young quarterbacks play.
Yeah, and again, we talk about the young quarterbacks getting to see. This should be hopefully what is a quarterback matchup that we get to see for a long time. Levis and Williams.
The number has come down, though. I meant to say that it opened up 4.5. It has gone down to 4, even some 3.5. So some early action on the Titans.
Number
plus
on the Bears coming down. Number on the total going up. So maybe some optimism that these two quarterbacks, again, with all those receiver weapons you mentioned for Tennessee and the lack of Derrick Henry being in Tennessee. Make no mistake, the big change for the Titans this year is they are not maybe going to be that 30-carry ground and pound team that we've seen for the last dozen years. It's going to be potentially throw the ball around a little bit more, and you can see that from a Spears and Pollard in the running backfield, where we get two running backs that maybe catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit more than what Derrick Henry ever did. On the Bears side of the ball, I don't think you can talk about expectations and excitement, obviously coming out of the preseason, coming out of Hard Knocks, coming out of having the number 1 draft pick, adding Keenan Allen, adding the weapons that they have. Excitement is sky high. Going into Soldier Field this week is going to be a completely different experience, and we'll see if the Bears can match that energy and enthusiasm with the product that they put on the field. But to me, Caleb Williams is a star right here in week number 1. He's got all the weapons in the world, make good decisions, run the football, and I think this sets up to be a good Bears team and a good Bears win here in week 1.
I do think there's a lot of pressure on the Bears, though, because they go 4-0 in the preseason, because you draft Caleb Williams, because he comes into a situation that's much better than almost any rookie first overall pick that we can remember. Look, Bryce Young gets drafted by the Panthers. The cupboard was bare around him. You look at a Bear team with, no pun intended, you look at a Bear team that's got a really good defense with Sweat, and now these weapons on offense, but a lot of pressure on, I think, that Bear team to kind of win week 1, because week 2 they play against a team that a lot of people are comparing them to, and that's the Houston Texans. Can they take that step? But really interesting matchup with 2 young quarterbacks. Next game for me is one the game that I struggle the most with from the point spread perspective. It's the Dallas Cowboys. We know how good the Cowboys are. They're loaded with talent. They travel to Cleveland, yet they're a 2.5-point underdog. I keep thinking this game is going to drop, that you're going to see some Cowboy love. Watson hasn't looked great in the preseason. They've got no Chubb. I know they made the trade in the offseason to get Jerry Jeudy to go with Amari Cooper. They tried to get Ayuk. They're a team that love to run the ball with Nick Chubb. They don't have him now. It's Jerome Ford. And it's a Cowboy team still. When you look at Dak and Cooks and CeeDee Lamb, I know there's some question marks at running back, but Ferguson at tight end and that defense, they're still loaded. I just think this game has to come down. I'm kind of surprised that Cleveland has maintained a favorite, but they are a 2.5-point home favorite against the Cowboys right now.
I will tell you this, that I have the Cleveland Browns as the number 1 home field advantage in all of the National Football
So you love the dog pound.
I think that not necessarily the dog pound and the stadium, but what this team and the confidence they have when they play at home is truly different than when the Cleveland Browns go out on the road. We saw the success that this team had with Joe Flacco coming in last year, in particular at home, with that defense. And the defense is what creates that home field advantage. And this is a top 3 defense in the National Football League when they're at home. These are the challenges they're able to put on teams. And with the fact that CeeDee's kind of a late signing, we've got Ezekiel Elliott with Rico Dowdle as the running backs. I don't know what Dallas, if the scheme for the Browns is
Delvin Cook too, right?
To shut down CD, and they should be able to shut down that running game. I think that this is a tough challenge for Dallas to go into. And I think the reason you struggle with it is just who are the Cleveland Browns on offense.
Right, exactly.
We don't know who Deshaun Watson is and what he's going to be. Ford, obviously.
He wasn't, when he came back, he wasn't the same quarterback, and he didn't look like the same quarterback last year. You lose Nick Chubb now, and, can he be that guy? Flacco had success, but, next year his contract goes, I think, to $75 or $78 million. Can he be that guy to get that offense going?
He's really surprised. Cooper, Jeudy, Njoku, these guys are playmakers. So if Deshaun Watson can do his job, depend on the defense, not turn the ball over. Again, I like the Browns at home. I don't know that I'll be able to say the same things when they travel out on the road. And I do think that this beginning of the season, first couple games for Dallas, seeing what CD is right out of the jump and finding out what Ezekiel Elliott's got left is really a question mark for me.
Yeah, me too. We'll see if that running game. I think.
And remember, they got beat up in the preseason on defense. This is the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
They're missing a couple key defensive players here to start the year. Number 1, there with Bland, who's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. He was the guy that had all those interceptions and I think 5 games of interception returns. So check out that Cowboy defensive depth chart, because I'm a little bit worried about it as we head into week 1.
Right. Again, really curious to see what this game does by kickoff, with the Browns being under a 3-point favorite right now. Let's look at a game that's kind of close to us right now, and that's the Chargers hosting our Las Vegas Raiders. Game has been as high as 3.5. It started to come down a little bit. I think it's the same thing as who are the Chargers exactly? I mean, no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, no Austin Eckler. Totally different team. They draft a big offensive lineman, Joe Alt. You've got Jim Harbaugh coming in there. Herbert's been hurt in the preseason against kind of a young Raider team that we know from a skill position. White at running back. You've got Myers and, of course, Devontae Adams. 2 really talented young tight ends, and Meyer and Brock Bowers, a young defense. But can Gardner Minshew be that guy for them? I think this Charger team, it'll be a different discussion in year 2 and year 3. But right now, they're a small home favorite against the Raiders.
Yeah,
if you can call it a home favorite.
The Chargers don't particularly get that fan base, and the combination of Vegas, Oakland, and LA Raider fans should probably overtake that stadium. And for the Raiders, the obvious big question mark is Gardner Minshew, and what is he going to do this season, and can he get it to those weapons that you talked about? And I think for the Raiders, the other big thing is obviously the big acquisition of Wilkins on the defensive front to go along with Crosby, who's a nightmare for those opposing quarterbacks. So the Raiders have those defensive skill set guys. They need to play good on the back end. The secondary was kind of their downfall last year. They did pick up some pieces of that puzzle to improve that secondary. To me, that's the big difference. But the Chargers necessarily aren't a team that's going to try and exploit a secondary. You talked about Herbert being hurt. We talked about several weeks ago that we don't know who their
Right.
number one wide receiver is. Probably Josh Palmer,
Right.
maybe McConkey comes
Right.
in and becomes that guy. But they want to run
think
the
it's
they want
Edwards
to run
and
the
Dobbins,
football
right.
with their kind of three-headed monster there in the backfield, and that's what Jim Harbaugh likes to do, is establish the run. So this maybe is a game where it's a run. Don't make mistakes and see who can steal this game late. Obviously, the Raiders have the great kicking game with Carlson, and we've seen this number come down where the Chargers were north of a 3.5-point favorite, coming down to a 3-point favorite. And I won't be surprised if we go under a field goal by game time.
It'll be really interesting to see the different Charger team, because you rewind the clock back to last year. You've got Justin Herbert, you've got Everett at tight end, you've got Allen, Mike Williams, Eckler. You have an explosive offense. I mean, you talk about Justin Herbert, who was one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks picked in fantasy football, a guy now that might be on the waiver wire in a lot of your leagues. So much different offense under Jim Harbaugh, but that's the way he builds it, from the trenches out, and we'll see how it all works out. We know they have a good defense,
The one thing about the Raiders, and we question and talk about just the overall talent level throughout the roster, but under Pierce, I can tell you this team is going to give you 110%.
They're going to play. Yep.
Every time they're on the field, and you watch them, they scratch and claw, and they don't give up, and they try to make plays. And so if the Raiders are going to win games, it's going to happen with a couple crazy things on special teams, that defense forcing turnovers, and we talk about that those things have to happen for those to win, but they can happen because this Raiders team plays with that type of effort and energy that I think you're going to see them have these crazy things that go on that keep them in games. And again, we talk about the kickoff rule change and that type of stuff. I think special teams are going to play a much bigger part in today's NFL than we saw just a year ago.
And I really think, Jay, the key comes down to Gardner Minshew. I mean, you look at Meyer and Brock Bowers. You look at Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams and White. They've got a really talented young kind of offense to go with Devontae Adams from a skill position perspective. I know we talked about it a few weeks ago. I thought Aiden O'Connell would probably win the job. They went with Gardner Minshew. I think he's got like that 4-week window to see how he kind of produces, to see if they make a quarterback change or not. But as we mentioned earlier, number is starting to trend downward. We'll see if it gets under 3. Sunday night football now. This is kind of a rivalry game a little bit. I know it seems weird, Rams-Lions, but you had the whole Jared Goff for Matt Stafford trade. These two teams played a really interesting playoff game last year late in the season. Lions are a home favorite here, a little over a field goal. They've got St. Brown, you've got Gibbs, Montgomery, Williams, Jared Goff, kind of that throwback mentality of Dan Campbell at coach against this Rams team that I think is sneaky good. You look at Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Williams at running back. They draft Corum. They've got a lot of talent on offense. When healthy, I think the Rams are kind of a sneaky team that people are kind of ignoring a little bit. And this is an interesting game to kind of kick off the season. Detroit kicked off last year. Again, I'm talking about the Lions. They kicked off Thursday Night Football last year. They're kicking off Sunday Night Football week 1 this year. So it's a Lion team that's getting a lot of love right now.
Yeah, I have a hard time, as a Bear fan, expressing enthusiasm for the Detroit Lions, but Dan Campbell has done an absolutely magnificent job in turning this team around, and I have them in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, so I expect big things out of this team. Younger players, we saw Jahmyr Gibbs kind of really develop last year, missed a lot of this preseason with an injury, but the 1-2 punch at running back with Singletary and Gibbs behind what is probably
Montgomery and Gibbs,
what is probably the top 1 or 2 offensive line in all of football, to go along with Laporta and St. Brown. And I made mention a week ago, I think Jameson Williams, the kind of the number 2 wide receiver for the Lions, takes a big jump to go along with Goff, and they play a ton of indoor football games. So they've got
only 3 games on the road this year. It went outdoors.
Perfect setup for the Lions this season. And I think that defense is improving. They made some draft picks there, particularly in the secondary, to get better there. On the Rams side of things, I have this Rams team as a playoff team. So they're in the playoffs for me as of right now, in that kind of second tier of question marks of Cowboys, Commanders, Rams, Seahawks in the playoffs. I have the Rams in, and the big deal for me is they get Cooper Kupp back. I think Cooper Kupp is 100% healthy. Now you pair him up with Puka Nacua in Matthew Stafford, who to me is one of the smartest quarterbacks in the NFL and finds those weaknesses to go along with McVay. They're going to be able to pick teams apart between Cooper Kupp and Nacua to go along with that running game. Obviously, they have to replace some things on defense,
right?
And they have those pieces in place, and we'll see where that can go. But again, I think that between Arizona, Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams, I think the Rams can make that mark. I do think that they challenge.
I think the NFC West, though, is a much better division.
Yeah, it's top to bottom, it's a much
with
improved
Murray
division.
healthy now.
I do think the Rams are second, just a slight back of San Francisco, and I'd say that they could take over San Francisco, but the San Francisco schedule looks absolutely fantastic and lines up perfectly for them. So if they're able to stay healthy, I think the Niners are in a very good spot. But this again, Sunday night game, but man, the Lions got to be excited, and you got to like the way Dan Campbell preps this team and makes this team play.
Again, the schedule makers for pro football did a great job. We've talked about the primetime games on Thursday and Friday and Sunday night, and it leads into the finale for week 1. Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets against the San Francisco 49ers. Niners have Williams and Ayuk under contract now, defending NFC champions. I think you look at the Jets, and on paper, I think they're the most talented team in the AFC East. I think they're above both Buffalo and Miami right now. But for me, the key really is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's on the other side of 40. He comes into this game not playing at all last year, getting hurt week 1. You've got Breece Hall, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Mike Williams, but most of all, they have a Super Bowl caliber defense to help him. He hasn't had a lot of success going back to his Packer days when he played at San Francisco. We know he got hurt last year in the opening Monday night game. He plays in a really tough spot against a Niner team, I think, that's built to win right now. They still have to re-sign Purdy next year, but you've got Ayuk, McCaffrey, Samuel, Kittle, so much talent on defense. Tough spot for the Jets. The game has started to creep up a little bit. We've seen it go to 4, maybe even 4.5 industry-wide, but what a great game on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, and I'll start with the Niners. I made mention of this earlier, and I've compared them a lot to the Chiefs. I don't know that there's a sense of urgency. We bring Ayuk back. We bring Trent Williams back. How much time have those guys had to practice? Again, I know that they've been with the team for several years. They know the plays. They know what's going on. But again, just a readiness to walk in week 1 and play a football game at a high level to compete against the New York Jets. I don't know if that's going to be there. They're going to be dependent big time on McCaffrey and Samuel. McCaffrey, again, hasn't practiced throughout the preseason. We'll see what he's doing with that calf and how ready they are to go. And you talked about it on the Jet side of things. Are we going to see Aaron Rodgers get past that first series? And how healthy?
That's not a prop, by the way.
How healthy can he stay? Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are 2 super dynamic superstars in this game, and they have had success despite the quarterback play with the Jets from the Zach Wilsons and other guys. Aaron Rodgers, throughout his career, has made guys around him better. Obviously, Devontae Adams was an exceptional talent that he had with him in Green Bay. But to watch Lazard and Cobb and some of these other guys that he's made superstars, and then watch them play without Aaron Rodgers and not put up a whole lot, makes you wonder what Aaron Rodgers can do for a Breece Hall, a Zach Wilson. This offense...
But is he the same Aaron Rodgers?
He's the same Aaron Rodgers at dissecting a defense. He's the same Aaron Rodgers at knowing what linebackers coming, who's blitzing, who's backing off.
But he was really creative with his legs.
We'll see. But again, Aaron Rodgers at 60% of who Aaron Rodgers was with the Packers is still 50% better than what the Jets had at quarterback last year. So when you think about it from that standpoint and where he could vault a Wilson to, the road for the Jets becomes very, very exciting.
Well, that's why I mean,
and not to mention that defense.
Yeah,
is
Super Bowl
awesome.
caliber.
Awesome.
And that's why, I think they're the best team in the AFC East. I think you look at Buffalo, a lot of question marks on offense. You look at Miami, they lost a lot of guys in the trenches. Can Tua stay healthy? Mozart's 32 right now. I think Tyreek's 30, so there's some question marks there. I really think the key to the Jets is Aaron Rodgers because from a skill position perspective and on the defensive side of the ball, they are super talented.
Well, the key to the Jets might be then the trainers, and we'll see how long that they can keep these guys on the field.
We'll see. So we're talking pros now. Don't forget LMS. Sunday's the deadline. Last man standing. $150,000 guaranteed in the pros. Same concept. $25 gets you 1 entry. $100 gets you 4, and a bonus 5th entry. You win and you move on. Get signed up. I mean, these are 2 really fun contests. Small investment gets you an opportunity for a really nice payout.
Yeah, and if you didn't catch the earlier segment, again, the college last man standing, $100,000 guaranteed, still open for signups all this week. Saturday's the deadline on the college. Pro football last man standing, $150,000, still open. Get signed up this week. And if you're by crazy chance you haven't signed up for the STN Sports yet, you still have that $250 no worry wager. And when I say crazy, I'm saying crazy. What we're doing is if you put in up to $250 onto your account, you bet up to $250 on a bet. If you lose, we're giving you up to $250 back into your account. We've lost our marbles. Come take advantage of the $250 no worry wager.
You heard it here. We've lost our marbles, guys. So we're excited. It's week 1. The book's going to be packed. The atmosphere is crazy. Get signed up for Last Man Standing. No worry wager. It's going to be fun, guys. We look forward to seeing you not only at Red Rock, but all of our racing sports books throughout the Valley. For Jason, I'm Chucky. Red Rock's Racing Sportsbook. Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, again, powered by STN Sports. One more thing.
And if you're not getting those games at home, remember, STN Sports has got all the games for you at our sportsbooks.
We'll see you guys next week.